Hi all. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about Angular component lifecycle. So, Angular component lifecycle is basically starts with constructor. Constructor is basically called every time when we are creating a component object. Then it will go to ng on changes, then ng on init, ng to check, ng after content init, ng after content checked, ng after view init, ng after view checked, and ng on destroy. So that is the sequence of a constructor lifecycle. So let's see with example. So I have created two components. One is child component and one is app component, which is a root component. So first ng on change is getting called, but ng on change is getting called when data bound input properties are changed. Suppose if a component is accepting a input from user, then only this life cycle is getting executed. If there is no input content taking by component, then on ng on init will be getting called. Okay, let's see by example. So see, we have two input box and we are taking two numbers as an input and we are calculating the sum of that number. So if you go to TS file, we are passing two numbers 10 and 20 and it will I am passing from data from one component to another component, means parent to child component. So whenever I am passing data from parent to child component, I can catch via input decorator. So input decorator, so for catching this data, input value 1 and value 2. So now see, I have written the lifecycle callbacks. Implements on init on changes and undo check. So on init, if I implement on init interface, I should override the method ng on init. Similarly, if I implemented on changes, I should override the ng on changes, and similar for do check. So if I am passing data from parent to child component and I have written input decorator, so always ng on change is getting called first, then ng on init. So ng, so whenever we are executing first the component, so the first time ng on change is getting called, and then after ng on init and ng do check. But if you are not doing anything in your page, so ng on init and ng change is getting called first time of your application. But if suppose if you are changing some data in input control, then ng do check is getting called again and again. So see, in ng on changes I have called methods some value. In some value, what I am doing, I am adding two numbers and returning to the summation of that number. Okay, so whenever you are clicking or adding data, if you're changing in data in control, always ng do check is getting called, and sequence callback after that, ng after content init, and then ng after content checked, ng after view init, ng after view checked are parallelly getting called after ng do check. Ng destroy, if you want to remove the reference of component, then we are it's a kind of a deallocation of component. So it's getting called last whenever you want to deinitialize the component. So as a sequence, first constructor is getting called, then ng on init getting called, after that ng do check called, but ng to check and the sequence of methods are getting called whenever you are continuously changing the data in input box. So let's see by example, do ng serve. So let's see the repetitively thing. Sequence of callbacks, constructor and ng on change is getting called when you are passing data with the input controls, input decorator, then ng on init, ng do check for it's called after ng on init only, but if it's getting called repetitively whenever you are changing any data in input box. And then after getting called ng do check, all the reverse sequence of callbacks are getting executed after content init, ng after content checked, view init, and view checked. Yes, going to start. Yeah, so see, so ng on change, then do check detects and act upon the changes that Angular can't or won't detect on its own. Means whenever you are changing the data after ng on changes, the ng do check is getting called. So call during every change detection, run immediately after ng on change and ng on init.